So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio Reading and for my YouTube channel. And today I am super excited that my guest is, well, the fantastically talented Tim Campbell, MBE. Welcome, Tim. How are you?
I'm really well, Matthew. How are you?
I'm really good. It's an absolute honor to have you on the show. I know you're super busy at the moment, so thank you for squeezing us in.
I've been running around left, right, and centre. I've literally found a little cubbyhole in the office, um, so I could make sure this is a priority. So it's good to speak to you.
Now, there's so much to talk about, but we'll start off with, of course, The Apprentice and the current series. So, for you, obviously, you've been part of it, and we'll talk about your time actually in the process. But as someone who's now there and you're kind of, aiding Lord Sugar and looking at the current contestants, what's your opinion been of the current batch of contestants and the process so far?
Listen, I really love the fact that we still, after 17 series, got a really enthusiastic bunch of young potential entrepreneurs who are thinking about how they could convince Lord Sugar to invest in their businesses. And although there's lots of naysayers about the caliber of candidates and the fact that people want to be famous, I think we just have to be really, really careful with that. We're trying to encourage as many people as possible to think about business as a potential career. Now, what I love is that everybody in the country seems to have an opinion about whether what mistakes or what people would have done in a scenario. And that's actually really positive, because if you are looking at something and think, I could have done better, or you should have done this, actually, hopefully that's sparked a little thing in your brain to say, well, actually, maybe you could do better or you could do something different. So in addition to applying for the next series, which is always open to every one of your listeners, it's also the opportunity to say, okay, so what could I do today that would make my life different in terms of a business idea or an initiative I want to take forward?
And I mean, the other thing as well is that the contestants each week, or the sort of the challenges that they have to do. I mean, who actually does? I mean, is it Lord Sugar who decides what the activities, the challenges are each week? Do you have any involvement in that?
Each series, the challenges are all thought out well in advance. So we just are putting all the candidates through the rigor of making sure that they're the right person to work along Lord Sugar. And what you'll see consistently throughout all the tasks is one key factor of every single business, no matter what it is, product or service, international or local. It's all about selling a concept, a product, or an idea, bringing that to market and convincing somebody to give you money in exchange for that service. Because I think sometimes when people talk about business, they're actually talking about a hobby that they're really passionate about or a charitable initiative. And there's nothing wrong with either of those. But we are very clear in The Apprentice, particularly because Lord Sugar is investing his own money in a potential enterprise at the end, that the focus for the show is about how people work amongst each other, so your team, but also how you can make sure that you are driven towards making a profit, which is central concept of business.
I mean, one of the great things with the series is obviously, you and Karen get to follow the contestants and see what they get up to. Are there ever times when you kind of want to get, butt in and get involved? Because I know you have to kind of keep yourself separate and kind of just observe. But are there times that you want to kind of step in and go, come on, guys, think this
Oh,
through?
definitely. Baroness Brady and I are really wanting the candidates to do the best they possibly can. We are there to simply monitor, keep the candidates straight and honest, particularly when it comes to the boardroom when they may have forgot a moment or two, and to make sure that we can feed back to Lord Sugar how people performed on those tasks when he wasn't there. Because that's actually our role, right? It's about making sure that we can document what happened in the real live environment of a task and how they candidates responded and what the potential outcomes are. Because Lord Sugar's not there every time when the candidates are out. That's our job, but we are there to feed that back to him, where he can then ask them questions about how they performed.
Now, obviously, you came into the show because Claude Littner was obviously unwell, and obviously that's why you've come back this time. Obviously, people didn't want Claude to be poorly, and we hope he gets well soon. But to be invited to become an aide and become part of the show from the other side, that must be such a thrill for you.
Oh, it's amazing. It's a great honor to be part of the franchise that brought me to the public attention, as it were, right? So, gosh, all that way back in 2005, I could never have imagined that I'd have come full circle and moved back now, helping to find the next person who's going to sit in that chair and receive those famous words that you're hired, right? Um, but it's a great privilege and one that I don't take for granted because I know how transformational that opportunity was for me, my family, my friends, my network. And when people are critical of the show, I do take that relatively personally because I know one, how much time and effort and energy goes into making the show, how much the candidates actually put in, and the fantastic sometimes businesses that they create on the spot with a couple of hours, and then how impactful that decision is on the final winner. Because when you look back over the generations and different series of The Apprentice, you can quite clearly see how robust the process is, which I think plays into its longevity, in that the finalists who have been selected usually go on to do great things. Lord Sugar's been really privileged in the millions that he's invested into the business to have successful exits, individuals still turning over multi-millions, individuals creating fantastic opportunities of employment. And in a time when there's so much negativity about the world of business, I'm really proud to be part of a franchise that's talking up not just business, but UK business, particularly headed by one of the UK's most popular and famous entrepreneurs.
And also, as well, the fact that you've been through the process yourself, the contestants can look at you and go, well, this guy's living proof that, this can change my life. This process will, depending on how well, they get through or how far they get through the process, it can change their life. So, I mean, what kind of advice would you give to the contestants in this series?
Well, I think the contestants across all the series, I always think there's three things that they should really, really focus on, which I think makes a perfect apprentice candidate. Firstly, you've got to have a level of authenticity. So you've got to be really clear about who you are and what you stand for and what you bring to the table. And sometimes we laugh at the one-line intros that they give you. They're going to sell snow to the Eskimos and the best person ever in the world. But you've got to have a level of confidence. But as long as it's authentic confidence, then I said it's not too bad, right? I think you've got to have integrity. Lord Sugar really, really likes people who are honest, whether they've done good or bad. And if they can volunteer when they've made a mistake and put their hands up, he's got a huge amount of respect for that. And I think the final thing for me is that you've got to be a team player because the key rule of The Apprentice, which always amazes me how few people seem to nail this, is that if your team doesn't lose, you don't get in the boardroom. It's not complicated, right? So the harder you work with your team and your teammates to win, the more likelihood you're going to get further in the process. But then the lights come on, the camera starts, and the people run around, and people are like, well, I'm going to be the best, and everything else. And then it's interesting for the viewers to see how that all plans out.
I mean, for you, either from your time when you're a contestant or, as an aide, is there a challenge or something that the contestants do that was a favourite for you that you enjoyed?
I really love the vast majority of the tasks, but I think the one that really sticks out for me is either when the candidates have to come up with a brand new concept that didn't exist before. So whether it's a game or an item or a recipe, whatever it might be, something that was brand new. Because you've got to remember, in this age of social media and legal processes, to come up with something brand new is actually really, really difficult. And the candidates are put through such pressures to come up with new things. It's amazing to me what they come up with, and it's brilliant sometimes, but also it can be incredibly funny when they've come up with things like toothbrushes and logos with very interesting color schemes in, right? So it can be really a lot of fun at the same time. But this is real world. This is how the business life is in the real world, right? It may be much more boring to sit down and watch people go through several different concepts, but there are businesses who come up with logos that they think are fantastic and everyone thinks, what were you thinking? And there are businesses that come up with concepts that seem great in the garden shed, but have no real commercial longevity once they're actually launched. I think the other thing that really interests me with the task is when the candidates have to go out and seek items from somewhere. So they're trying to do some negotiation around the place with other business people. And you soon learn that you can't pull the wool over everybody's eyes all the time because these are other business people that you're dealing with, not just the public who are trying to buy an item or a service.
So, because one of the things I've always wondered is when they're doing those sourcing items from a list, are they allowed to like Google things, or is that not allowed in the list?
Oh, it would be very easy then, wouldn't it? Now in this stage, and I think this is one of the appeals of the show actually, because in an age where you've got artificial intelligence and Chat GPT telling you everything under the sun now, right? It's really interesting to see if you took away all the resources that people are used to having, how resilient are actual people in the real world. Um, I'm really fortunate now to work as part of an education vehicle called thezishi.com, right? And we teach people about how to build resilience in their business through education. And when you watch some of these candidates, they are learning on the spot how to do this because there's no phone, they've got no access to the internet, they can't phone their PA, they can't phone their mum, they are just stuck all by themselves. And actually, that's when true creativity comes out. That's when true ingenuity sometimes comes out. But at the same time, that's when also big mistakes happen.
I mean, one of the things that I love is the expressions on, like, you know, yourself, Baroness Brady, the expressions on your faces when some of the things the contestants come out with. I mean, what is going through your head when you're sat there thinking there is a simple answer to this solution, but they just can't seem to find it?
It is really difficult. Baroness Brady and I talk about this quite often. It's one of the hardest things about the show because Baroness Brady is a really helpful individual, right? In her business life, she supports female entrepreneurs. She really passes on great tips through her columns in the newspapers. And obviously at work, she supports the careers of aspiring footballers who are coming through and making their careers. And then to be both of us be placed in a situation where that bit of our natural personality is turned off or restricted is really hard, which then accentuates the faces or the height of the eyebrows or the furrows on the brow because our brains are telling us just help them, tell them what to do because we are fixers, like we want to do stuff, but you have to be reserved because our role is to just observe. And that is sometimes very difficult. Sometimes it does slip out. Sometimes Baroness Brady will help them with a maths thing, or sometimes I'll tell them that the timer's going off and they've got to hurry up and they've got to move along. But that just comes out. But in essence, we are by law told just to stay away and let them perform, which can be easier said than done.
Now, we must talk about the boardrooms because the boardrooms look like they are terrifying, especially for us normal people who have never witnessed, or, you know, been in an actual boardroom ourselves. For you, do you remember the first time you ever were sat in Lord Sugar's boardroom as a contestant? How were you feeling?
I did. Well, there was two. I got to sit in the boardroom 3 times, I think, through my series, and someone will be able to remember if it was exactly. It was on show, episode 1 when we introduced him. There was a task I lost about, I think it was the Harrods task. So it was a shopping task. We had to do some shopping in Harrods. I lost that task and I was in the boardroom. And then, obviously, in the final with Syra, my lovely sister from another mother who's out there, that was the only time I spent in there. But let me tell you, they are the most terrifying moments that you will ever experience because there's him, there's the aides, there's the contestants that you're competing against, and there's a pressure on you to articulate really quickly to who's very diligent questions about why you should stay in the process and what you contributed to task, as well as making sure that you can rebut any accusations that are coming from your colleagues, but mindful that you're going to have to go back to the house if you survive and be friends with them as well. So there's so much going on in your mind. And what people don't realize is that these boardroom conversations go on for hours. They don't just last the 10 or so minutes that you see on the screen. They go on for hours sometimes because Lord Sugar is really plugging away to find out what actually happened and what was people's actual responsibility in those tasks. So it can be very terrifying and very tiring.
The other thing I always find quite interesting in the boardroom is when you get contestants who will sit there and try and kind of say they did one thing when actually it turns out they did another. And the fact they were filmed, you would have thought it's not going to wash really. So, I mean, when you're sat there, obviously, I mean, there have been times when yourself or Karen has had to actually butt in and go, well, that's not quite how it happened. So, do you quite enjoy that sort of when you're like trying to sort of one up people?
I think it's for us, the focus is keeping the contestants straight because sometimes their imagination can get away from them or they might omit a certain thing because they've forgotten it in the excitement of a task and their enthusiasm of articulating how good they were in a scenario. And once again, our sole purpose in that boardroom is to inform Lord Sugar about how his candidates have performed in the task. So we take no joy in tripping somebody up or finding out something they didn't say or correcting an error, because actually this is about making sure I have all the candidates who apply, the best ones get through to the end. So therefore, if we can contribute towards that by just keeping everything on the straight and narrow, refreshing people's memories and making sure that we get the truth as we saw it and as you rightly say, Matthew, was recorded, which is always amazing. They forget this, then actually that's our job and we're happy with it.
I mean, another part of the process which everyone loves is always the interview stages of the show. For you, do you remember your interviews and how that went?
I do, and I was a bit intimidated by some of those interviews. I remember, well, no, intimidated wasn't the right word. I think what I was really anxious that I got so far in the process. I didn't want this to be the end because by that time, after week 11, you've done 10 solid weeks of batting yourself against all these challenges, waking up at god awful times in the morning, running around and collecting stuff and winning. And then you get to that stage where you're so close to actually what you actually aspired for, you could almost touch it. And then the interviews are the next obstacle. But they then ratchet up the pressure so high because these titans come in and start interrogating you. It was very different in my day because obviously my role was for a job where these candidates now get individuals attacking their business plans and really making sure that they stand up to the scrutiny, which is right. But this is once again a reflection of what happens in real business. If you're going to acquire a company or you're going to invest into a startup in return for equity, you would go through what they call a due diligence process, which is that you check out exactly what had happened. It's just like when you would potentially go out on a date with someone. You'd want to know exactly what their history was, making sure that they were single, like they said they were. There was no skeletons in the closet, and they weren't the Tinder swindler or something from old, right? So you do your due diligence. And with business, Lord Sugar is really fortunate to have a group of trusted advisors that he's worked with for a number of years who can come in and take that role for him of analysing the business plans, analysing the individuals and feeding that information back to him in the boardroom before he gets to pick and select who is the finalist in the show.
Now, obviously, having won the series, obviously the first series, and now being a trusted aide of Lord Sugar, I mean, a lot of people think he's a scary bloke, but what is he like in real life? And it must be such an honour to have become part of his trusted team.
Well, listen, no one should be under any illusion that Lord Sugar is not what you see on the screen. He is not an actor. He's not putting on a show. That is Lord Sugar. But the good thing for me is that going through the process previously and now as an aide, I have a huge respect for that type of individual because there is no ambiguity with him. You know where you stand. If you've done a good job, he'll tell you. If he's not happy, you'll know. And that binary status is one that I really respect. And growing up in a Jamaican house with a Jamaican mother, I wasn't very scared of many people, right? So I did have to worry about him because my mum was much more scary. All I had to worry about was the parameters of the task and what was being required and requested. And then the rest is history. I think some people come into the boardroom thinking that, oh, he's not like that all the time. He's all right. He tells a joke. They soon find out that there is an incredibly sharp, astute mind behind those quips that he puts out there, which can cut through you like a razor blade.
Now, for you, where did the kind of interest of business or, where did that start for you? How did your career kind of start off?
Well, I think for me, I worked in the public sector. So I'd gone through mainstream education, not really understanding how business worked, apart from I knew that if I wanted to earn money, I had to engage with a sale of a product or a service. So I worked in lots of retail got a bit disillusioned with all of that. And then after completing my university qualifications, went to work for the public sector in Transport for London. Now, after working in there for a number of years, doing relatively well for my career pathway, I then saw the opportunity for the Apprentice, and I knew of Lord Sugar because of his computers. So I'd bought one of his computers. Well, my mum did. I was too young then. So my mum had bought one of the computers for me. So I already understood that if you could create something of value, then you get something back. But my experience before then was only around the public sector or working for somebody else. So to get the opportunity when I saw the advertisement to work for one of the UK's biggest business people, to be mentored in a particular role within his business empire, and to receive a six-figure salary, I was like, where do I sign? Where do I sign? Get me in there. And I think now, having worked with him, the best thing about having worked with Lord Sugar is actually getting to see him firsthand run his company, because that was actually really inspirational. What people seem to forget, beside all of the accusations around being belligerent and old school and whatever not, is actually they don't see a businessman who has had people working for him for over 30 years, sometimes longer now, right? Some of the original employees of Amstrad, Alan Michael Sugar Trading, as he named his company before he sold it, were all about individuals who are experts in their field, who are choosing to work with an entrepreneur who was going to change the game. And that's exactly what he did in the world of electronics and stuff. So from that perspective, it was a great honor to work for him, because I learned so many different skills and tricks and the rules of the game that I've now applied to subsequent things that I've gone on to do afterwards, which has served me really well.
I mean, going forward, is there still goals, dreams, things you would love to do that you haven't done thus far?
Yeah, I think that there's. I was once talking to a friend of mine, a gentleman called Dean Forbes, really inspirational guy. Come from South London, very similar story to Lord Sugar's actually. Come from East London and now grown and worked his way to the top of his field of expertise. And he said, when I made my first big lot of money, I thought, yes, I've made it. This is the end. And what he realized after that is actually it wasn't about the money. It was about the pursuit of overcoming obstacles and giving opportunities to other people. And he said, now I've learned that as a skill, why would I stop? Why do I just carry on doing and keep on doing more? And I think I've taken a bit from that, as it were, in terms of having started Bright Ideas Trust, raised a couple of million, invested in startup businesses. I was so amazed by the impact we had on people's lives by helping them to create a business out of a talent or skill they had. That was one of the most inspirational times of my life, right? And now, with an impending financial crisis, either now or very soon around the corner for most people in this country, I think there is a big opportunity to teach and educate people about the power of financial literacy, understanding how money works and how they can make it work for them in the most efficient and effective way. So the next challenge for me is about how do we bring that to life and make that a reality for most people.
And I mean, of course, The Apprentice will always be part of your life now. So, I mean, is it quite nice to know that you'll always be part of the family?
Oh, hugely. Listen, I have nothing but good things to say about the show, because having gone through it, having been very true to myself and received all of the benefits of being the winner, it will always have a special place in my life, as it were. I think the important thing for me, though, is that The Apprentice has always been a chapter. It hasn't been the sole defining thing. So we've gone on to do loads of other things. I've got a beautiful family. My children still think I'm all right. They kind of hate that on television because it's annoying, because my head gets bigger and stuff. But it's nice to have been part of something that is doing good. It's facilitating the opportunities for many people through that particular show that I'm most proud of. And long may it continue, because the reality is, looking at the contestants who come through, all of them would say that their lives have changed as a result of going through the process. And that's not a bad thing.
And anyone who maybe is sort of contemplating applying, what would you say to them?
If you're going to apply, be really clear about what you are bringing to the table, because Lord Sugar is going to be much more direct in his questions when you meet him for the first time, if you get through, and you better have an answer about why you need to be there. And I think the other thing is that if you think you've got what it takes, go and register. go and register for the application. Go onto the BBC website and register for it. And I say that because I didn't initially think I'd be good enough or worthy to go through the whole process, right? But once I shook that off, because I sent the application to lots of people that I knew, thinking that they'd be good for it. And what I've realized now, retrospectively, is that you have to be, it's as cliche as it sounds, you just have to be in it to win it. You really have to be in it. And you might not win to the level of the prize that's being offered, but if you overcome that inertia, that fear, that worry about failure, then you're already a winner because you've done something beyond what you thought you're capable of. And I think that's the bit I hold most dear about the show, is that it just got me to look out of my comfort zone, and that served me very well. And it's lessons that I pass on to my children now. So it's not a bad thing.
Now, I just want to say before we go, it's been a pleasure talking to you, but is there any messages you'd like to give to anyone who's currently stuck in hospital at the moment, or anything you'd like to say to the amazing NHS staff, you know, all the amazing work they've been doing? What would you like to say to them?
Well, listen, for all of the staff who are diligently supporting all of the people within the hospitals across the whole of the country and around the world, my heart goes out to all of you, and my gratitude goes out to all of you. My big personal link is that my mother-in-law and my sister were both connected to the NHS. My mother was a home care worker with individuals who came out of hospital. So anybody who has that vocation to want to go and support the next generation, I think it's incredibly important. And I think beyond those clapping moments that we had, we have to remember that we should be respecting for those individuals who are willing to sacrifice so much that they are going to help others get better when sometimes they are the ones who need help. For everybody who is in hospital, who's listening to your wonderful radio show, listen, my heart and prayers are with you, right? Just remember this, is that somebody once said that you have to sometimes look at all the dots that have joined up to get to where you are. And there's a reason why you're here. You're here to inspire somebody, you inspire yourself, you're here to just give it 100%. And whatever your situation is, whatever might happen, just remember that you have made a difference in this world and somebody is going to benefit from what you've contributed. So thank you very much for allowing me onto your show, Matthew.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving up your time. Of course, keep safe. You're welcome back anytime. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Love it. Listen, everyone, be safe, be well. Just enjoy everything you can. And thanks, Matthew, for having me on.